When I was a senior in college, I met my nun. I was in my last year at Loyola University Chicago. All my friends were leftist Catholics, and we spent the weekends going to anti-war protests and eating ice cream with the guys training to be Jesuits at the Jes-Res, where they lived on campus. And I was a theology major, and I decided that I wanted to get a spiritual director, which is basically somebody that you talk to about God and prayer and your calling in life. And I knew that I wanted to get a woman because I was sick of the patriarchy, and I still am, just for the record. And that's when I met Sister Chris. She had just moved back to Chicago from teaching in a seminary in the Midwest. And she had platinum white hair, bright red lipstick, and she told me that her dad was a Greek god and her mother was an Irish lass, and they had made her. And spiritual direction is a little bit like dating. You have to both say yes and be into it. And thankfully, we really hit it off. And so soon, every other Thursday, I was going to Sister Chris's apartment off campus and drinking tea and talking about God. And she became a bit of a celebrity amongst my friends. She would regale them with stories about how she almost ran away with this priest who was in love with her, but decided to stay in the convent. And my friends started affectionately calling her my nun, and that's what she was. And I kept in touch with her for many, many years after I finished college, after I moved back to Boston. And every time I went back to Chicago to visit friends, I would see her and we'd have these long lunches over soup and bread, looking at Lake Michigan and having great conversations. And then about a year and a half ago, she decided to move to Phoenix, Arizona, where her order has an all-girls school that she was gonna help out at. And she says to me, you should come and see me in Phoenix. We could go to the Grand Canyon. And as much as I wanted to go on an adventure with my nun, I kind of hedged a little bit and I was like, yeah, maybe we could do that. And it's because I, in my 20s and 30s, struggled a lot with anxiety, and it had manifested itself around claustrophobia and then just settled on flying. I know there's a train from Boston to Phoenix, but I think it takes weeks. So that didn't seem like an option. And then about 6 months after she got there, she was diagnosed with a very serious illness. And I just had this compelling feeling like, I have to see my nun. And I thought to myself, maybe I could fly there. And I didn't tell anyone, because even saying that made my hands sweat and my heart race. It's actually happening right now. And finally, I told my friend Joel, I'm like, hey, I think I might get on an airplane again. And he was like, let's ask the answer book. So he gets this giant hardcover book out, and he hands it to me like, ask the book. So I say, should I go to Phoenix to see my nun? And I open it up to a random page, and it says, no matter what. I bought my tickets the next day with flight insurance. And then I started doing a deep dive on Google, fear of flying. Pictures of inverted 747s appear, balls of fire. And then I found my salvation, Captain Ron. Retired commercial airline pilot turned mental health counselor. Helps people get over their fear of flying. Coincidentally based in Phoenix. But since I couldn't fly to Phoenix to get over my fear of flying to Phoenix, we did Skype. And he found out my last name was Angel, and he said, angels are meant to fly. And I said, okay. And I bought his digital flight harmonizer, which was an audio of airplane sounds taking off, overlaid with affirmations. And I would listen to it with headphones on the bus, because I knew it wasn't gonna take off down Mass Ave. And a few months go by, and then it's my day, and I'm at Logan Airport, and I am waiting for the plane. And you could have put tights and a cape on me, and I wouldn't have felt more like a superhero. This was Herculean. I get on the plane, it's very small. I mean, not really, but it felt small. The guy next to me, thank God, is a talker. He wants to tell me everything there is to know about retirement in Arizona. And we're barreling down the runway, and I turn to him and say, here we go, Neil. And Neil looks at me, he's like, are you afraid of flying or something? And I was like, I haven't flown in 9 years, Neil. He looks straight ahead, unrattled, and says, well, grab hold if you need to. So pretty soon, me and Neil and 100 other people are in the air, and all my intrusive thoughts come back. You are in a tuna can in the sky, and you can't get off of it. You're gonna have a panic attack, they're gonna land the plane in Kansas and arrest you. But Neil's voice about the trailer park and the palm trees just keeps bringing me back to the present moment. And as the plane levels off and we reach cruising altitude, so do I. I go into the bathroom, I give myself wild thumbs up. You're killing it. We land in Phoenix. I get to meet Neil's wife, who had to sit a few rows up because they bought their tickets late, and I thank her for having the kindest husband in the world. I get a ride to the convent, and my nun, always a night owl, is up waiting for me under a palm tree. We decide that the Grand Canyon is too far, so the next day we drive to Sedona, a couple hours away. We wanted to check out this church called the Chapel of the Holy Cross, which is kind of set out across by the Red Rocks. It looks like it's part of the mountain. And we took a golf cart to the base of it, but then there was this tall path that we had to go up, and the golf cart didn't make that. So the volunteer was like, we got a wheelchair over there, and there's this really strong young Canadian guy who volunteers with us. And I was like, I got this. So my nun gets in the wheelchair, and I'm pushing her up. We get to the church, and the desert sun is just coming in so brightly through these stained glass windows. And it just smells like wax and candles, and I can feel the heat on my face. And I turned to her, and I'm like, I am just so glad I'm here. She's like, me too. I'm so glad you came. She put her hand on my arm, and we just sat there in silence. And a week later, I'm on the red eye back to Boston, and the guy next to me doesn't want to talk. But I don't need him to this time, because as the lights on the plane go out and the plane takes off, tears are streaming down my face. And this time, all I can feel is gratitude. Thank you.